All right. Welcome to Pro Football's first 50 years, where we bring the past and bring it back to life. And you can go back on the internet, and especially I'm just talking the first 50 years, from 1920 to like 1970. 1920, 21, it wasn't called the NFL, it was called the American Professional Football Association. But anyway, first 50 years, especially going back to the 20s and the 30s. Now, this game is in 1930, we're going to talk about here. You can go online and find the box score, who scored, maybe how far the touchdown was, maybe how long a field goal was. You can find the starting lineups for each team. You can find, obviously where the game was played at. This game in particular, you can't find the attendance. The only thing I could find in this game was that there was a nice sized crowd. There was no number. No. But for the most part, you can find a lot of things. And even, certain games going back in time, there's little highlights here and there. Somebody throwing a touchdown pass or somebody making a touchdown run and all. But exactly what happened during the game, and thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game in the first 50 years of the NFL. Now, this game in particular here, a lot of people, heard obviously the Green Bay Packers, but how many people heard of the Minneapolis Redjackets, huh? And this was actually the second. We're going to go a little bit more into it in depth and detail here in just a moment. But this is actually the second time that they played in the NFL. In the early 20s, they were the Minneapolis Marines. Didn't fare too well in the NFL. They came back later on in the late 20s and became the Minneapolis Redjackets. So, thanks, I said, once again, thanks to some old newspaper articles. We're going to have a couple of articles here to go over. And one of them, thankfully for the Green Bay Press-Gazette, play-by-play, exactly what happened during this game. So just a little news flash here for you. There's no fancy videos or nothing going on, all right? I don't want to upset anybody. All there is you, me, for the next 30 to 60 minutes. If that's all right with you, let's get it on. So the game we're talking about here today is October 19th, 1930. The Green Bay Packers played the Minneapolis Redjackets at Nicollet Park. Now, I love this kind of stuff. Especially we're just talking about like teams that ain't around no more. I love this stuff. The last few games that the Packers played 4 games so far this season, and obviously this season 1930, the Packers 1929, 30, and 31 they won the championship. They were the first three-peat in NFL history, not to be confused with the 1922, 23, and 24 Bulldogs, who won the championship. It was the 1922 Canton Bulldogs, the 1923 Canton Bulldogs, and the 1924 Cleveland Bulldogs, who had quite a few members of the 1923 Canton Bulldogs on their team in 1924. But as far as just an individual team, the Green Bay Packers, 1929, 30, and 31, were the first three-peat. So Packers are very good this season. This would be the Packers' 5th game of the season. After, spoiler alert, they would win this game. They would be 5-0. They started the season off in 1930 8-0, and they started stumbling toward the end. And this was a very, very close game. Very, very close race, because from 1920 to 1932, the team with the best overall winning percentage at the end of the season won a championship. There was no championship game. There was a playoff game, I guess, if you want to call it, in 1932, because the Chicago Bears and the Portsmouth Spartans, a.k.a. the Detroit Lions, both finished 6-1. They played a playoff game, I don't know if you want to call it that, inside of a hockey stadium in 1932, and the Bears would wind up winning 9-0. But pretty much from 1920 to 1932, there was no championship game. The team with the best overall winning percentage won the championship. In 1930, the Green Bay Packers, with a winning percentage of, it was 769, won. Giants came in second place. Their winning percentage was 765. So by 0.004, the Green Bay Packers won the 1930 NFL championship. So as I said, so this game here, the Packers handle them quite easily. The Minneapolis Redjackets had their moments, not in this game really per se, but they had their moments during the season, mainly when they weren't playing other teams. So let me just share my screen here. We'll go over. We'll show. Start with the Packers here, and we'll start with their schedule. All right, now this was kind of like, I don't know if we want to call it like a home and home, but on the 19th of October, Green Bay went to Minneapolis and played in Minneapolis. And you'll notice here the next week, October 26th, Minneapolis went to play in Green Bay. And the Packers won both times. This time they won 13-0. That next week's game, they won 19-0. And they said that they started the season off, the Green Bay Packers playing the Oshkosh All-Stars. Whooped up on them 46-0. Then they beat the Cardinals, the Bears, the Giants, the Yellow Jackets, and now they're going to beat the Redjackets today. So let's go over the Redjackets here. Now, this is a little interesting here. They were not very good in the NFL, but if you'll notice here, like the first game of the season when they played the Spring Valley Northland Oils, they only won 90-0. That was all. It was a close game. They tied the Chicago Cardinals, who were not very good this particular season. They lost to the Bears. They actually beat the Portsmouth Spartans. Then they lost to the Packers. Then they had a couple games that apparently were scheduled during the middle of the week and apparently were not played. I guess maybe canceled. They're supposed to be rescheduled for another time. Do they have anything down there? Let's see. Milwaukee Nighthawks. Okay. Game was canceled. So, and then they were supposed to play the Oshkosh All-Stars, too. Apparently that got canceled, I guess. That's the same Oshkosh All-Stars that the Green Bay Packers started the season with, an exhibition game. But, then they lost to the Packers. Then they played the Des Moines White Line Tigers and whooped up on them 38-0. But then they played the Chicago Bears. They lost 20-7. They're supposed to play apparently the Newark Tornadoes. I guess that got canceled. They played the Brooklyn Dodgers, who were in the NFL. Lost 34-0. Staten Island Stapletons. They were supposed to play them. Apparently that's how that got canceled. They lost to the Providence Steamroller the last game of the season against the Portsmouth Spartans. They lost that. So their NFL. Okay. They were 1-7-1. They finished in 10th place. Winning percentage of 125. So they were not very good at all. They were not very good at all. And the year before that, because this was the last season in the NFL. The year before that, they were in 11th place. They were 1-9. Now, who do they beat? They beat the Chicago Cardinals 14-7. That's embarrassing. They lost they beat Hammond, but Hammond wasn't in the league. So they were not a very good team. Not a very good team at all. So I'll go over a little bit of history of the Minneapolis Marines / Redjackets. As I said, they were in the league 2 times. Neither time, didn't work out very well. And obviously, one of the biggest things is, you have to win. And if you don't win, you don't get people coming to you to see the game. They played in Nicollet Park, which never held a lot of people. As I said, in this particular game, there is no attendance record. I have no idea. Well, I saw one article that said there was a nice-sized crowd. Now, the crowd that came out, obviously, I'm sure part of them were Red Jacket fans, but also, some of them wanted to see the best team in the NFL, which would be the Packers. And that was another one of the things, too, is back then is that if you were a bad team, maybe teams didn't want to come see you because maybe there wouldn't be that many, Well, although there a lot of times there was like a guaranteed amount of money that a lot of times the visiting team would get, but I mean sometimes they they didn't want to play poor teams. So even though it meant like maybe an easy victory, a lot of times they wanted to go where the crowds were at. So, all right, but here we go. The Minneapolis Marines were an early professional football team that existed from 1905 to 1928. The team did not play in 1918 or 25, or from 1925 to 26, and was later resurrected from 1929 to 1930 under the Minneapolis Redjacket name. The Marines were originally owned by the Marine Athletic Club of Minneapolis and later by the Minneapolitans, John Dunn and Val Ness. The Marines played their earliest games in the sandlots of Minneapolis and at Minnehaha Park. They made their first appearance at Lexington Park in 1909 and Nicollet Park in 1910, and that's where this particular game is being played at, Nicollet Park. They had their origins in like around, the 1905. They played some sandlot. The Marine football team played in sandlots. First in the self-report 115-pound weight class, and by 1909, then 140-pound weight class. Then there were a professional team, the Minneapolis Beavers, not the Marines, were the biggest independent football attraction in Minneapolis through 1909. They got 1911, not 1913. Then you had obviously World War I, which was, was over with by 1918. All right, so we got the Marines in the NFL. 1920, John Dunn decided to stop playing and instead focus on managing the team. And in 1921, he sought to join a new Western professional league based in Omaha, Nebraska. When that league never materialized, Dunn and a business partner, Val Ness, who had played for the Marines in 1919, secured a franchise for the team in the National Football League. Well, it wasn't the National Football League in 1921. It was the American Professional Football Association. It wasn't the NFL till 1922. Dunn then recruited Ruben Ursula to play and coach the team, and he beefed up the Marines' backfield by recruiting two former Gophers, Minnesota College, Minnesota University Gophers players, Pete Rayner, I guess, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, sorry, and Ben Dvorak. The Marines won the first NFL game they ever played at Nicollet Park when he beat the Columbus Panhandles, who sucked, 28-0. But overall, from 1921 to 24, the Marines won only 4 games and finished 4-18-2 in the NFL, 15-21-2 overall, including non-NFL opponents. Let's see. John Dunn was elected vice president of the National Football League in 1922, but after posting an 0-6 record in 1924, Dunn folded the team, yet he retained the franchise and his position as vice president. He would serve in that role through the 1928 season. All right, so an exhibition team still inactive as an NFL franchise. The Marines returned to the field to play exhibition games in 27 and 28. The Marines hosted Ray Grange and his New York Yankees NFL franchise in 27 and in 28. All right. The Redjackets. In late May 1928, Herb Joesting, there he is, announced he would captain and manage an entrant in the NFL with former Gophers player Ken Haycraft as an assistant. He promised the team would be an all-collegiate aggregation, unlike previous attempts to field an NFL team in Minneapolis. Behind the scenes, Dunn and Ness paid the NFL franchise fees in 1928 to revive the team as the Minneapolis Redjackets, a name that perhaps continued the military theme that Dunn had adopted, first with the Marines, a name he inherited, and later with the 151st Field Artillery, the name for his minor league football team and practice squad. It is conceivable that the name Redjackets may have been inspired by the 1st Minnesota Infantry Regiment that fought in the American Civil War and wore red shirts. As a football team, the Redjackets wore red helmets, red jerseys, red pants, and red socks. Wow. That's a bit too much red for me. On the sideline, the Redjackets wore hooded coats in the same color. So basically, they were all in red. Wow, that's ugly. Let's see. All right, so then we got here. The Redjackets finished 1-9 in the NFL in 1929, 3-9 if you include non-NFL games. And so for 1930, John Dunn recruited former Gophers captain George Gibson. There he is. Who had worked as an assistant coach for Clarence Spears. There he is. Looks like he spilled something on himself. At the University of Minnesota to coach and play for the Redjackets. Let me just keep going down here. Dunn and Ness sold tickets to their team for the first time in 1930. While the Redjackets game versus Nagurski and the Bears drew a crowd, the Redjackets only won one game in 1930 against the Portsmouth Spartans. After they lost to the Chicago Bears at Wrigley Field on November 2nd, and after the Frankford Yellow Jackets lost to the Chicago Cardinals at Comiskey Park that same day, Dunn sold most of the franchise players' contracts to Frankfurt and sold 3 player contracts to the Green Bay Packers. It's not clear whether Dunn and Ness had sold the franchise per se to Frankfurt because later reports indicated they still had a stake in the league. Either way, the Frankfurt Athletic Association would oversee finishing the schedule for both the Yellow Jackets and the Red Jackets. The Yellow Jackets and the Red Jackets. And for the remainder of the 1930 season, the manager and coaches of the Frankfurt Athletic Association would use players from both rosters to play in the Yellow Jackets and Red Jackets games. A total of 20 players, including 10 original Red Jackets and 10 original Yellow Jackets, jumped back and forth between both teams. Go figure. And in the case of the original Red Jackets, 3 players, Gibson, Barriger, and Joesting, appeared in every single Red Jackets and Yellow Jackets game after November 2nd. The Red Jackets finished the season with a 1-7-1 record, an NFL record, and 1-7-1 NFL record, 3-7-1 including non-NFL games. And Minneapolis would not hold another NFL franchise for the next 3 decades until the Minnesota Vikings entered the league in 1961. So they tried. They were just not a very good team. Not a very good team at all. The game was played at Nicollet Park, which pretty much was a baseball park. And they wound up putting the footballs. They got just basically a football field. They lined the football field inside of a baseball park. And I got some pictures here. All right. I got to find them. I got 37,000. All right, here we go. Let's try this one here first. Okay, this is an old game at Nicollet Park, an old one. 1907. Happy Thanksgiving, Tommy's Thanksgiving Day football spirit at Nicollet Park. The College of St. Thomas faced the Minnesota University All-Stars in Minneapolis. Look at this. I mean, look at these. Look at the goalposts. I mean, it's just like they got wood. I guess it's wood, and they banged the wood together, and that's the crossbar right there. I mean, it's a piece of wood, right? And they got more wood. Bach nailed some more wood to it. I mean, geez. I guess most people were kind of standing still when they took this photo, but I got a couple of people who were moving. That's why the guys look all blurry and everything. But it's from 1907. This is like 125 years ago. It was a college game. College football reigned supreme back then. See, is the crowd overflowing crowd over here. So, but as we go by, we'll start noticing more and more that it's like pretty much like a baseball. So all right. So I got that. Let me, as I said, there's quite a few photos here. All right, next. Okay, here we go. Let's see. This one here, okay? You notice. But this Nicollet Park here, right, in Minneapolis, right? This is where the game was played. But this is in 1944. Wooden bleachers built as the home to the minor league Minneapolis Millers will be temporary home to Minneapolis high school football games that fall. So you see right here, right? So you got the stands right here. This is the outfield fence right here. Goes around. So they got the bleachers. They just built these bleachers. And you see right here, this is the sideline right here. I guess it goes down there. I guess maybe it's the 5-yard line here, maybe the 10, the 15, the 20, and so on, all the way down the field. Unless it goes back here too. Maybe this is the 5, maybe it's the end zone. I'm not exactly sure, but this is how they got the field and they put it inside of the baseball park. Now we're gonna have some more pictures here in just a moment. And it's pretty interesting here. Pretty interesting video. There we go. Once again, please forgive me. I got a lot of tabs open up here. Okay, let's try this one here. Okay, this one's pretty cool here. All right. So Nicollet Park, and this is opening day at Nicollet Park is baseball, 1925. So it's pretty much, this is about where the football field was at. You had the grandstands here, but then, the football field was placed inside the baseball field. Right? So that was opening day in 1925, Nicollet Park. But, this guy is right here. And this guy here. Oh, there you go. Kind of gave it away right there. Babe Ruth and the Yankees actually played an exhibition game. Or 2 or 3 or whatever, 1924 they came. So Babe Ruth played here. Once again, you can see the fence, the outfield fence here. And there's Babe Ruth. You see, there's it's a nice sized park. I mean, I've had some stands. People could attend, especially in the late, mid to late 20s. People could attend. It was a nice size. And they called it, park, right? All right, and then we got I got 2 more here. And once again, this is when it started coming down here. They started taking this down. They were ripping it apart. This is Nicollet Park right here. All right. Ooh. There we go. So you see, once again, you see the wall out here, right? You see the grandstands. Nice size field. Really nice size field. So what it was, they put the one end zone was down here, and the 100 yards all the way down here. And then what they would do is, what you saw in that one picture, they might possibly build bleachers on the one side here for people to sit on. You got the bleachers on the one side, you got bleachers on the other side. You got, I don't know if they built bleachers at the one end of that I don't know, but people could also sit in here too. So it was a nice sized park. As I said, once again, a lot of what I found was all baseball. Nicollet Park, baseball. Yeah. Here's a nice aerial view of it. Twin Cities Park, but it was also called, I guess, Nicollet Park too. But once again, right, the end zone would be down here, and then, the 100 yards would be out here. Nice size for a football field. I mean, this must be a heck of a shot here from here to center field. It must have been a heck of a shot. But all right, then I got one more here. A little bit of Wikipedia. Just read over this real fast here, and then I got a couple newspaper articles we'll go over about the game, into more in depth and detail. So Nicollet Park was a baseball ground located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The venue was home to the minor league Minneapolis Millers of the Western League and later the American Association from 1896 to 1955. So they played baseball there a long time. I mean, what? About 60 years. The ballpark opened on June 20th, 1896 with a 13-6 win over Milwaukee. The new grounds were first known as Wright Field, named for one of baseball's founding fathers, Harry Wright. Area newspapers had held a contest and chose that name over Nicollet Park, among others, awarding season tickets to the winning entrants. The papers acknowledged the built-in pun on right field and added it to it by describing one hit in the opener as a home run knocked by the right fielder across right field out of right field. The club park's owner were not enamored of the name, and it was soon renamed Nicollet Park, the name Nicollet being ubiquitous in Minneapolis then and now. The wooden ballpark was replaced by a steel and concrete structure in 1912. Lights were installed in 1937. So this game here, there was no lights. The game we're about to go over where the Packers played. First night game was played on July 16th with the Millers hosting the arch rival St. Paul Saints. The teams had also played the previous night in Lexington Park's first night game. Oh, let's see here. Let's see. Doesn't say much at all about football. Oh, here we go. All right, here we go. Oh, is it down at the bottom? I didn't go far enough down. My bad. I do apologize. The park also held early National Football League games as the Minneapolis Marines and the Minneapolis Redjackets played home games there during the 1920s. 1944, the Minneapolis Millerettes of the American Girls Professional Baseball League called Nicollet Park home. Nicollet Park was also the place that the cereal Wheaties was first advertised. Go figure. There you go. Augsburg University's football team played their home games at Nicollet Park from 1946 to 1950. The New York Giants and Green Bay Packers played a preseason game on August 29, 1948 at Nicollet Park. Very interesting. 1955, the ballpark closed. Currently, a condominium building and a medical center clinic is located on the north portion of the former baseball park site. So, unfortunately, those old ballparks, they don't last forever. It is what it is. But you can say, it was around for a long, long time. Primarily a baseball park, but you can see with the grandstands in there and enough room in there for a football field, you can see where, it could be used for that. Especially because in that one photo that I showed where, it had the sidelines and then had they had to build some seating on the side over there. So let's see here. In this, go to the 1930 season. They did have, what was the most? They had 7,000 fans reported there against the Bears in Nicollet Park. And then what about the year before? Let me go previous season, 1929. Nicollet Park, they had 3,000 people. They had 6,000 people. So, they had, not an overwhelming amount of people, but, they had 6,000, 7,000 people. But they would have had a lot more had the Minneapolis Marines or the Minneapolis Redjackets been a better football team. It's just the way it was. If you were not good, I mentioned this, on the previous video. Nowadays, obviously, when you're in a home team, you want to have a sellout. I understand. But nowadays, you sell jerseys, you make a certain portion of that. You get money from television. You get a nice chunk of money from that. Even if you don't sell out, you still get a nice chunk of money from there. People get charged $3,000 for a freaking beer at a football game. The team gets a certain portion of that. Pay $85 million to park your vehicle. And a team gets a certain portion of that, I'm sure. So there's plenty of ways for teams to make money nowadays to stay afloat. Back then, if you didn't have paying customers coming into the game, you were in a lot of trouble. And obviously, if you did not have a good team, you couldn't get customers to come in to pay. And, you could not afford better players because you didn't have people coming in to pay. So it was just, you're screwed all the way around. I mean, if you had people coming in, you had some extra money, you can go out and buy better players, bring in better players, put a better team on the field. To put a better team on the field, you get more people to come out, and so on, so on, so on. You can't afford, if you got a bad team like the Redjackets, nobody comes to see you. You have no money, you're screwed. So that's what wound up happening with them. So I got two newspaper articles here. We're going to go over one from the Minnesota side, and then we're going to go to the Green Bay Press Gazette, which is going to tell us play by play exactly what happened in this particular game here. So let me go here, share my screen, and where are we at here? Okay, we're going to go to the Star Tribune and give it a little, give a nice little Redjackets lose last home tilt to the Packers, 13-0. Green Bay holds league top with perfect record. Said they would be 5-0 after this. Giants would be 5-1. Providence Steamroller would be 4-1. Brooklyn Dodgers are 4-1-1. Portsmouth Spartans are 3-1-1. And the Giants, look at what they did to Frankford. They beat them 53-0. I mean, that's a major butt whooping. You score 53 points on the team back in 1930. That's a lot of points. Okay, so Green Bay champion Packers continued their undefeated march through the National Football League Sunday afternoon by stowing away a 13-0 victory over the Minneapolis Redjackets in the final professional football game of the season at Nicollet Park, and be the final football game ever for the Minneapolis Redjackets at Nicollet Park in the NFL. The Redjackets determined to score their second upset in 2 weeks, played the Packers pretty much on even terms for most of the game, but couldn't stop two quick thrusts that gave the champions their winning margin. The two touchdown marches of the Packers were almost identical. They amounted to a series of running plays, a long pass, and a final buck for a touchdown, and both were so smoothly executed that they appeared simple. They played the Packers even. However, from early in the first quarter until midway in the final period, it was a give-and-take ball game with neither side able to sustain a dangerous assault. The contest was largely a kicking duel, with Vern Llewellyn, the Packers' great back, have a considerable edge on Art Farmer, twice putting kicks out of bounds within the Jackets' 10-yard line. The first Green Bay march started with the opening kickoff, which Red Slate fumbled and recovered on his own 45-yard stripe, with Lidberg punching the line and Llewellyn and Wirt Engelman cracking the tackles and ends. The Packers pounded to 3 successive first downs. Then Llewellyn unfurled a long pass to Big Tom Nash, who dashed to the 11-yard marker before Orrin Pape hauled him down from behind. Engelman and Lidberg smashed 5 yards on 2 plays, and Llewellyn catapulted through a gaping hole of the Jackets' right tackle for the final 6 yards and a touchdown. Red Dunn kicked the goal. So you see, it's all it takes. And unfortunately, when you wind up having, no offense to speak of, whatever, it makes it very difficult to come back, especially if much less it being down 1 score. But if you're down by 2 scores, that's almost asking the impossible. A pass that accidentally brushed a Red Jacket lineman gave the Packers the ball on the Minneapolis 40-yard line and set the stage for the final scoring drive in the closing session. A couple of plays into the line netted a few yards for the Packers, and then Dunn whipped the pass to Curtis McCrary, who snagged it on the 15-yard line and rambled 11 yards before little Jimmy Peterson, Jacket back, nailed him by the back of his pants. With only 4 yards to go, the first thrust was halted after a 1-yard gain. But Bo Melinda crashed over the Minneapolis right guard for the score on the next play. Wilson blocked Dunn's place kick, making the score 13-0. The battle of punters began as soon as the first Packer touchdown had been scored. The Jackets, led by Herb Joesting, who crashed through the Green Bay line for consistent gains, accounted for several first downs while holding their bigger rivals pretty well in check, but couldn't get much past midfield, as once an intercepted pass by Lidberg and twice fumbled by Pape halted them. Each time Llewellyn kicked them deep into their own territory. A score was called back. A long pass from Dunn to Llewellyn was completed for a touchdown near the end of the first half, but the play was called back when Green Bay was offside. Again, on the last play of the period, Nash speared another long toss from Dunn over the 15-yard line, taking the ball over the heads of two Jacket backs. Twice in the third period, the Redjackets started promising marches, which ended a little beyond midfield, and Llewellyn's long punts forced them back. A punt of Farmers was partially blocked by Slate and went out of bounds on the Minneapolis 26-yard line, but the Packers gave the ball back by fumbling it to the Millers 10 yards from a touchdown. Aside from Millers, who played only a few minutes and did some slippery ball carrying, Joesting was the only consistent gainer for the Redjackets. Big Herb gave another typical exhibition of line bucking, repeatedly tearing through the heavy center of the Packer wall for gains ranging from 3 to 10 yards. Nate Barriger, again, was the defensive mainstay of the Jackets, being at the bottom of nearly every running play the Packers tried, while Peterson, the stocky Augsburg youngster, backed up the line in workmanlike fashion. Llewellyn was the ace of the invaders with his passing, kicking, and running, and Lidberg and Engelman proved themselves as powerful runners as they were in their college days at Minnesota and South Dakota State, respectively. Now, once again, here you got the starting lineups. For each team. Green Bay scores in the first period, go up 7-0, and they score 6 points in the final period to make it 13-0. Then you notice here, it wasn't an overwhelming amount of substitutes. I think Green Bay only had 4. McCrary went in for Engelman, Melinda went in for Lidberg, Wooden went in for Zuber, and Darling went in for Earp. Only 4. Morris of Rock Island was the umpire. Keefe of Milwaukee was the head linesman, and Hall of, Minneapolis. Oh, referee was Morris of Rock Island. I'm sorry. Umpire was Keefe of Milwaukee, and head linesman was Hall of Minneapolis. Minneapolis only had, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They only had 7 subs, so. All right, so that's that. That's from the Star Tribune. But let me go, and we'll go over the Green Bay Press Gazette. That first, it's a 2-page article. Not 2 full pages, but 2-page article. The first page is, give you a little brief outline of what happened. Plus, it also has their own starting lineups as well, too. So let me go here to page 13 of the Green Bay Press Gazette from October 20th, 1930. All right, Packers whip Minneapolis, score 13-0. Get over here. All right, over here, great work. Here's their start lineups. Once again, Packers 7 in the first, 6 in the final, scored 13. Same thing, once again, the Packers just had 4 substitutes. And Minneapolis had about 7. There's the referees, the umpire, the head linesman. And once again, the Packers started actually 8-0, so they would still win their next 3 games before they would start stumbling a little bit toward the end. The final 6 games they played, they lost 3 of them. It made it really, really interesting. All right. The Green Bay Packers proved to be better Eskimos than the Minneapolis Redjackets, and the freezing temperature that was on tap at Nicollet Field Sunday afternoon proved so much to the liking to the national champions that they scampered home with a 13-0 win. It was the 5th straight victory for Captain Curly Lambeau's team in the National League's 1930 pennant race. However, the Badger machine had to fight like the Dickens for everything they got as the Gophers, flush with their victory a week ago over the crack Portsmouth club, were in there trying their best every minute, but this was not quite good enough, as one shivering fan remarked as he hustled out of the ballpark after the final whistle blew. Class will tell, even at the North Pole. There you go. I like that. I like that. That is one smart individual. Class even at the North Pole. And it's amazing, right? They're talking about shivering and all of that. This game was played in Minnesota, and it was only October. And they're talking about how cold it was in October. So, only 4 substitutes. Coach Lambeau, Curly Lambeau, is evidently laying the ground for another one of his Iron Team stunts because against the Redjackets, he made but 4 substitutions. Melenda replacing Lidberg, McCrary going in for Engelman, who injured his knee. Darling went to center as relief for Earp, while Wooden took up the right guard's duties when Merle Zuver's tummy started to act funny again. Interesting. I never heard that one before. Maybe he was starting to throw up. A roving center, Barragar, I guess, by name, from sunny California, got so mad at the weather that he proceeded to take his spite out on the Packers. He was here, there, and everywhere, and his defensive exhibition was as good as has been seen on a Minneapolis gridiron in many a year. Barragar had plenty of assistance. Ward played well at tackle, while Joesting backed up the line like he did when making football history at Minnesota. Offensively, the Redjackets didn't show much. The Gophers failed to connect on a single forward pass during the combat. Wow. While their few advances were credited to Orrin Pape of Iowa and Vern Miller from St. Mary's. This Miller is the same gritter who ran up 130 points last year on the collegiate gridiron. Wow, that's a lot. Because back then they only played like 8 or 9 games. They don't, they play like 900 games nowadays with the conference championships, and then they got the playoffs and all. They play 3,700 games. They play a lot of games nowadays. But back then, especially there weren't 3,000 ball games either like they are nowadays. So, I mean, back then they only played like maybe 9 games, maybe 10 at the absolute most. So if he played 10, he scored 130 points. That's a lot of points. However, he didn't do anything to add to his record in this departure of the game, maybe in this department of the game, against the Packers. Packers looked every inch champions that they are. The Green Bay players were on their toes every. Okay, let's continue. We're going to go to page 14 of the Green Bay Press Gazette, and we'll get to finish this up. But this is a long one here. This is long because this finishes the overall, review of the game, and then it goes into play-by-play of what happened exactly in this game. So a minute and a couple of times the officials found it necessary to warn the Badgers against their super aggressiveness. Joesting was a particular point of attack for the Packers, and they dumped him hard and often. Several times he was knocked cuckoo, but a bucket of cold water was always sufficient to bring him around to listen to the signals again. Wow. So, needless to say, Lord knows how many times that guy wound up with a concussion during the game, but they just splashed some cold water on him and he's good to go. Amazing how times change, huh? Quite often, Lidberg and Joesting would crash into each other, and the thud could be heard along the sidelines. These two former Minnesota stars certainly were trying to outdo each other in more ways than one, and their personal duel got a lot of attention from those who knew the inside of things. Punting was just about the difference in the class of the teams. The Gophers tried both right and left-footed punters, but the Minneapolis bootsmiths seldom got much yardage. The towering Packer forwards would come sifting through like a raging flood, and several times the punts were partially blocked. But with the Packers, it was a different story. For a week, the Twin City papers had carried yards of copy about Llewellyn's super kicking ability, and many of the fans donned their red flannels and overshoes just to see the district attorney do his stuff, and he didn't disappoint them. He was agony to the Redjackets, generally on the third down. He would amble back into the open spaces and wiggle his fingers. True as a dot, the ball would flash back to him. Sometimes Llewellyn would run. Again, he would pass out. As a last resort, he would boot him just about where he wanted to. One of his punts rolled out on the 1 yard line, while another sailed across the sidelines at the 3 yard stripe. While just towards the close of the game, he got off one of his skyscrapers, and the cowhide sailed some 80-odd yards up the field. They could boot the ball back then. High over the head of Seaborg, the Minneapolis quarterback, who watched it go by like an outfielder does when Hack Wilson uncorks a home run. Packers didn't waste any time breaking the ice so far as the scoring went. Minneapolis kicked off to Slate, who juggled the oval but fell on it like a hot potato. Engelman skipped outside of tackle for a first down. Then Lidberg picked up 6 yards, and Llewellyn followed with 4, and the sticks were moved up again. 3 plays picked up about 7 yards, and Llewellyn got back to the punt. Instead, he shot a pass to Tom Nash, who ambled to the Redjackets' 10-yard line before he was stopped. Llewellyn goes over. Here, Minneapolis gave the old college try for 2 downs, but on the third rush, Michaels, I call Michaels, Michael-esque, maybe Michael-esque. I call him Michaels. So Mike Michaels and Jugger Earp cleared a path for Llewellyn, and the Packer ace slid over for the score. Red Dunn increased the Packer margin by kicking the ball between the uprights with yards to spare. This was all the scoring until the final stanza, but in between times, the Bays threatened often enough to give the crowd a thrill. Once the Packers counted what looked like a touchdown when Dunn passed to Llewellyn, and he ran 25 yards to the goal line. However, the head linesman called an offside on the Packers, and there was no score. Once again, the Bays were down on the Redjackets' 5-yard line, and it seemed as if nothing less than an earthquake could stop. However, a backfield fumble delayed the agony and gave the Gopher fans something to cheer about because a Red Jacket fell on the ball. About the middle of the 4th stanza, the Redjackets' pass fell into the Invaders' clutches, and this started a march that didn't end until the Green Bay team sewed up the game with touchdown number 2. The thrust started on the Minneapolis 40-yard mark. 2 line plays netted about 4 yards. Dunn then whipped a pass to McCrary, and the former Georgia All-American stepped along until quarterback Peterson stopped him on the 4-yard line. On the second scrimmage, Melinda battered his way over the goal line. Dunn fell for the extra point. There wasn't much excitement during the remainder of the game except that one copyrighted punt of Brown Country's district attorney. All right, here we go. Play-by-play from the Green Bay Packers at the Minneapolis Red Jacket game from October 19th, 1930. Here you go. Minneapolis kicked off the slate to the 29-yard line. Engelman, Lidberg, and Llewellyn carried the ball on off-tackle plays to the center of the field for 2 first downs. The Red Jackets held, and Llewellyn from punt formation threw a long pass to Tom Nash, who caught the ball on the 25-yard line and galloped to the 10-yard line where he was down by Peterson. Lidberg picked up 4 yards at center, down to the 6. Engelman added 2 yards over right guard, down to the 4. Llewellyn on a cutback weaved through a hole opened up by Michael and Earp for a touchdown. So he picked up 4, and then he added 2, so they got down to the 4-yard line, and then they wound up scoring their touchdown from 4 yards out. According to this, got down to the 10. He's tackled at the 10, and he picked up 4 down to the 6. They added 2 more yards. That's down to a 4-yard run. Llewellyn for a 4-yard run. Dunn's kick from placement went over the bar, giving Green Bay 7-0 advantage. Green Bay kicked off the Minneapolis on the 30-yard line. Dilwig nailed Pape for a 3-yard loss, and the Gophers punted out of bounds on the Packers' 30-yard line. Engelman picked up 5 yards, and Lidberg added 15 through center for another first down. 3 plays gained 7 yards, and Llewellyn punted to the 25-yard line where Pape was stopped. A pass failed, and the Jackets punted to Dunn, who brought the ball to the Packers' 40-yard line. A pass failed, and Llewellyn punted to Pape, who was down in his tracks by Nash on the 19-yard line. Green Bay linemen broke up 2 Jacket plays behind the line of scrimmage, and Farmer got off a poor punt, the ball going out of bounds on the Jacket 40-yard line. Farmer was rushed by the Packer tackles. The Jackets were penalized for offside, and Lidberg made a first down on the 29-yard line. Llewellyn fumbled after a 5-yard gain, and the Jackets recovered. Farmer and Joesting made it first down on the Jacket 35-yard line. Farmer punted to Dunn, who was down on the 18-yard line as the first quarter came to an end. The second quarter, Llewellyn punted to Pape, who was down on the 35-yard line. Pape picked up 12 yards off tackle. Dunn intercepted a pass from Farmer on the Packers' 27-yard line, where he was stopped. The Packers picked up a first down on line plays and a penalty. Dunn passed to Dilwig for an 8-yard gain. Dunn made it another first down on a quarterback sneak to the Redjackets' 45-yard line. 2 line plays and a pass failed to gain, and Llewellyn punted out of bounds on the Jacket 5-yard line. Farmer returned the punt, the ball being down in midfield. Engelman picked up 5 yards, but a pass to Dilwig failed, and Llewellyn punted. Dilwig downing the ball on the Minneapolis 1-yard line. Farmer punted to Dunn, who touched the ball but didn't hold it, and Haycraft recovered for the Gophers on the 40-yard line. Farmer and Joesting. That's another game right there. Farmer and Joesting made the first down at midfield. Farmer fumbled, and Slate recovered for the Packers. Engelman picked up 7 yards but was hurt, and McCrary replaced him. Llewellyn made a first down on the Jacket 33-yard line. On a tricky pass play, Dunn passed to Llewellyn, who raced over the goal line, but the ball was called back, and the Packers were penalized for being offside. Llewellyn punted to Pape, who brought the ball to the 15-yard line where Michael and Dilwig stopped him. Joesting made a first down on the 37-yard line with a great smash. Joesting and a penalty made it first down on the 49-yard line. Pape fumbled, and Earp recovered it for the Packers on the Minneapolis 47-yard line. So, you see, some of the Redjackets had a hard time moving the ball, but they were also some of their own worst enemies with all these fumbles. Melinda went in for Lidberg. Miller went in for Pape. Passes to McCreary and Llewellyn failed, but Dunn dropped back on the third play and hurled a long pass to Nash, who made a great leaping catch, racing to the 12-yard line where he was stopped by Pape as the gun went off, ending the second quarter. So, the Packers were down deep. Now, had the quarter been another, minute or two longer, possibly the Packers would have added some more points, but it is what it is. So now we start the third quarter. Wooden went in for Zuver at guard as the quarter started. Joesting brought Michael's kickback to the 30-yard line. Michael smeared Farmer for a 2-yard loss. 2 other line plays failed to gain. Farmer punted out of bounds on the Packers' 37-yard line. Llewellyn punted back to Pape, who touched the ball, and Nash grabbed it and raced over the goal line, but the officials called the play back, claiming that Pape did not touch the ball, and the Jackets took it on their own 15-yard line. So the Red Jackets possibly dodged another bullet there. Had he touched it, the ball, I'm not exactly sure, to be honest with you, because that would be like a muff punt. You can't, you can recover it, but you can't run it back for like a muff punt. It's what, unless it changed, possibly the rules changed back then. I don't know. But if you muff a punt, you can't run it back for a touchdown. Now, if you have the ball, full possession, and you fumble it, then the other team can pick it up and run it back for a touchdown. But if it bounces off of you, touches you on a punt, now the ball's live, the other team can recover it, but they can't run it back for a touchdown. Farmer punted to midfield. A pass and 2 line plays failed, and Llewellyn punted over the goal. Joesting picked up 5 yards, but Pape was stopped on the line by Michael. A pass to Haycraft was incomplete when Dilwig knocked the ball down. Farmer punted to the Packer 40-yard line. McCrary and Llewellyn picked up 8 yards through the line, and Llewellyn punted over the goal line. Pape lost 10 yards on a fumble. Farmer got off a poor punt, and the ball going out of bounds on the 26-yard line. Wow, that's a horrible punt. Llewellyn, McCrary, and Melinda made a first down on the 10-yard line on straight line plays. McCrary picked up 5 yards over right guard. Melinda fumbled, and the Red Jackets recovered on the 10-yard line. Joesting made 5 yards, but Farmer lost 2 yards when Nash broke through the interference. Farmer punted to the Jackets' 38-yard line. Now you see him; it was like a punting battle going back and forth. The Red Jackets were not helping themselves. They had some pretty poor punts. Dunn picked up 9 yards around end. Llewellyn made a first down on the 27-yard line, and Melinda was stopped at center as the third quarter came to an end. Bad. Dunn was stopped on a sneak. Peterson intercepted a pass and brought the ball to the Jackets' 30-yard line. 2 plays failed to gain, and Dunn, who brought the ball to the Farmer, got off a great kick, the ball being down on the Packer 25-yard line. Llewellyn punted out of bounds on the Minneapolis 35-yard line, and a pass to Wilson failed. Pape fumbled, and the Packers recovered on the Jackets' 38-yard line. McCrary picked up 2 yards off of right guard. Melinda smashed Drew for a 4-yard gain. He was stopped by Peterson. Dunn dropped back on a fast play and heaved a long pass to McCrary, who made it a great leaping catch and raced to the 2-yard line, where he finally was brought down by 3 Minneapolis men. McCrary gained a half a yard at center. Melinda crashed through for a touchdown, going over the center of the line. Dunn's kick for the extra point from placement was blocked, and Green Bay had a 13-0 lead. So according to this, McCrary made a great and raced to the 2-yard line, where he was brought down. McCrary gained half a yard. So Melinda crashed through for a touchdown, going over the center line. So it was like a 1 or 2 yard touchdown run. Michael kicked off for the Packers. 3 plays gained only 4 yards. Lundell went in for Farmer. Darling went in for Earp. Lundell punted out of bounds on the Packers' 20-yard line. 2 line smashes and an incomplete pass failed to give the Packers a first down, and Llewellyn punted to the Jackets' 35-yard line, where Darling downed Miller in his tracks. Miller picked up 9 yards and a fine line buck. Joesting made it first down on the 47-yard line, and Nicollet drove through between guard and tackle for 7 yards. Nicollet failed to gain at center, and the Packers were penalized, and the Gophers got a first down. Miller went off tackle for a 6-yard gain. Joesting gained only 2 yards with a terrific smash at center, and a pass to a jacket end was incomplete, and the Packers took timeout. Joesting was stopped for no gain at center, and the Packers took the ball on downs at their own 35-yard line. Melinda picked up a yard at center. Llewellyn made a yard at tackle. Llewellyn punted, getting off a marvelous kick, and the ball sailed over the goal line. It was an 80-yard punt. Whew, I guess maybe where he kicked it to maybe going over the goal line. I mean, wow. Nicollet picked up 3 yards on a wide end run. Nicollet's pass to an end was incomplete. Nicollet punted to the Packers' 32-yard line. Dunn failed to gain at center as the game ended. The final score was Green Bay 13, Minneapolis Redjackets nothing. So that was it was pretty much a punting duel. Now it seems like both teams in this game obviously hurt themselves with turnovers, as happened back then. I mean, turnovers were very common back then. I mean, teams would be getting crucified nowadays if they turned the ball over as much as they did back then, between interceptions and just fumbles. That was very, very commonplace back then. But the one thing is that, obviously with the Redjackets, especially in this one particular game, they had no passing attack whatsoever. And obviously that was one of the biggest things that really, really wound up hurting them. But the Green Bay was the better team. The Redjackets fought them tough. Really, really fought them tough, but it was not meant to be. So Green Bay, after this game, were 5-0, on their way to starting the season 8-0, and on their way to winning their second consecutive NFL championship. So that's how it was on this particular day, October 19th, 1930, between the Green Bay Packers and the Minneapolis Redjackets at Nicollet Park. Wow. Huh? In pro football's first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.